Is a man that you are seeing close down? Does he pull away when you want him to open up to you and connect with you more and get deeper with you on the important things in life? Is that what's going on? And would you like to have him open up to you instead of pulling away? And let's get started. Hello, my name is Matthew Coast, and welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get him to open up and stop pulling away instead of opening up. So that's what we're going to be talking about. All right, let's get started here. Number one, let's talk about the first thing that you want to do. Number one is you want to build mutual trust between the two of you. And so a problem that a lot of women do is if a guy's not doing what they want him to do, they get upset, they freak out, there's a whole bunch of different things that women tend to do instead of like having a conversation with them about what's going on, right? Or talking to them or encouraging them. It's like a wall, right? They hit a wall, and so they feel like they don't have any control, which I totally get. And if you don't feel like you have any control, it's very easy to feel like you just want to freak out because you don't know what to do and you want things to be a different way and they aren't. And if you do that with a guy, you're going to destroy his desire to open up and connect with you because he's going to think that there's something weird going on there instead of feeling safe and like he can actually trust you. Or another thing that I've seen a lot of women do, and I've actually had a lot of women do this to me, is especially in the West, right? If you're in the West, specifically America, this is a very common thing that women do in America, which is making fun of guys who open up to them. This is a very, very common thing where it's kind of like this banter, right? Like this sarcastic humor thing, especially on the eastern side of the United States. They have this very, very popular where if you're like bantering back and forth and it's kind of like this sarcastic, like put them down kind of thing. It's actually guy talk. That's what it is guys do this and it's guy talk. And a lot of women have kind of adopted it because America has become incredibly masculine for women, incredibly feminine for men. And so a lot of women have adopted this, but it makes a guy not feel very safe, right? Like if he starts opening up and you're like, oh, you're going to cry on me now, huh? You want a tissue, right? Like, it's like, okay. Yeah. So you are somebody that I cannot open up to ever, right? That's basically what he thinks if you do something like that. And so you don't want to do that. Instead, what you want to do is if you want to be trusted, be trustworthy. Now, I know that seems like common sense, and it is, but we live in a time when common sense isn't that common anymore. And it's okay if you don't know that. I didn't know that actually growing up and probably the majority of my life. And so here's the thing with trust. Trust is not built during the easy times. It's really easy to do the right thing when everything's cool and calm and fun and loving and happy and all that kind of stuff. Trust is built during the tough times. It's built when things are hard. It's built when it's difficult to make the right decision. If you make the right decision in the difficult times, if you take his back, if you take his side, when you want to take somebody else's side, when you want to do something other than the thing that would most connect you with him, that is when trust is built, not when it's really easy and you open up to him and stuff, which it can actually build trust as well. But it's one of those things where the more difficult it is, right? And that's why being vulnerable can actually build trust with a guy, is because it's difficult to do. It's risky. And so if you're doing it, other people are going to feel more open and willing and trusting in you to do it as well because you already did it. So number two thing that you can do to get him to open up and not pull away when you're trying to open up with him is be patient with him. right? Just be patient. Like a lot of women, they actually, when they like have a problem with this, they come to me and they're like, he hasn't opened up yet, and I wanted him to open up. And you're like, well, how long have you been seeing each other? 2 weeks. And it's like, whoa, like it's okay, right? Especially at the beginning, he probably doesn't trust you that much yet, right? And if he's got issues and trauma and some other things going on in his past, and you're not really opening up, then it's very possible that it might take him a little bit of time. And so you want to give him some time to open up, which is one of the reasons why you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and be in a world of scarcity with men. Because if you're in a world of scarcity and there's only one dude and he's not doing what you want him to do, it can be really, really devastating for you. And so you don't want to do that. He may need some time to open up, and he may never open up, right? Like we can talk about like getting a guy to open up, and you can do a lot of things to influence him. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to him. And if he's been in a pattern for a long, long time of not opening up to people, then it's going to be very, very difficult for him to open up to you in that way, right? If the people that are the best at opening up to people are people that open up to people all the time. I'm one of those people. Like if I have something going on or there's something or whatever, and I'm talking to somebody and I'm like angry and I'm like, well, it's not really about that. It's because, they put pickles on my hamburger earlier and I just hate pickles, right? That's kind of a joke kind of situation or whatever. But the point is that if he's not the kind of person that opens up, right? Like we all live in patterns, and his patterns rule his life, just like your patterns rule your life. And so if his pattern it's been 15 years and I've never opened up in the last 15 years, he may never open up to you or anybody else for the rest of his life, right? Without going to like therapy where they're like, hey, are you going to open up or not, right? You're literally paying us for you to open up and you're not doing it. And if he's not, allowing himself to open up in some situations, then it may never happen. And that's not most people, though. Most people are not like that. Most people open up to some degree, and you can kind of connect with them in those ways. And they're just desperately looking for somebody else who's opening up with them and that they feel safe around, where they feel like they can open up. It happens with me all the time. I was actually hanging out with some guys yesterday or the day before, and I realized at the time that I hung out with them before that, which was actually the day before that, I think I may have come off a little bit like harsh in what I was saying. And so, I apologized to him and I was just like, hey man, I didn't mean to come off across like that, and I was just feeling this way. And I just want to let you know that, I don't mean it this other way in case you guys felt like it was that way. Right. And which is a little piece of opening up, right? It's opening up a little bit. And so, they were kind of like, joking around or whatever. But later that day, one of the guys was having a problem and he like started talking to me and he's like, yeah, this has been happening with this, girl that I've been dating. And this is what happened. I just feel really confused, not sure what to do. And I was just like, there you go. You know what I mean? Because I'm opening up and I'm willing to do it. He's willing to do it as well. And so anyway, the whole point is that you want to be patient with him. If you freak out because he isn't opening up right away, he's far less likely to open up with you in the future. Or if you freak out on him at all about things, especially if he opens up and you freak out about it. Sometimes women will do this where they'll ask a guy questions and they don't want to actually know what the answer is, right? Because the answer isn't something that they want to hear. And the guy will be honest about it and they'll be like, I have to go, right? Or they'll be like, I can't believe that. You're a sick human being, right? And it's just like, hey, we all have things in our lives that are weird or whatever. And we all have desires and different things that are weird. And the more that you can just kind of accept and just be open and just be like, hey, whatever he's saying, it might be crazy or it might offend me or whatever. And instead of allowing myself to get triggered and stuff, just allow it to come through. The more that people, men in general, and everybody in the world are more likely to open up to you at some point. So I won't harp on that anymore. 3, be kind to him when he does open up. And this is kind of going back to what I was just talking about, right? If you catch him opening up, even just remotely, like even just a little bit, don't get mad at him that he wasn't opening up to the extent that you wanted him to open up to. Instead, just, let it in and just praise him, and reward him for opening up a little bit, right? It's like a kid, right? It's like if you have a kid, like a baby, and the baby, like you put the baby up to like start walking, and the baby like takes a couple steps and then falls on its face, right? You're not over there like, why aren't you like walking across the room? What's wrong with you, baby? You should be walking and running by now. But you're not. It's pathetic, right? You aren't doing any of that kind of stuff, right? Instead, you're like, oh, good job, baby. You did a great job of taking a couple steps. Now we just got to see if you can do that again and do it some more, right? And then the baby's like, hey, I'm so happy that you guys are taking steps, right? And are men babies? Yeah, that's debatable. The older I get, the more that I realize that most people are actually just babies that have grown up but still have baby tendencies. So I'll get off of that and just go back to saying, instead of attacking him or getting angry or getting upset that he wasn't doing what you expected him to do, instead just point out the behavior and reward it and appreciate it. Appreciate him and appreciate what's going on there, because that's a much better way of doing things. All right, number 4. Number 4 is give him space before he needs it. This is actually a highly contested thing, apparently. I didn't know this was so highly contested. But here's what you want to do. If you think that he needs some space, give it to him before he starts taking it. And he'll miss you and want to come back instead of wanting to pull away further. And so if he has some issues going on, you can tell he's kind of starting to get distant or whatever, give him some space, right? Just immediately give him some space. What a lot of women do, and what I think is really natural for women and can be a really powerful thing, is they'll come over and they'll be like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Is everything all right? Right? And they'll try to like get him to like open up and like get all over him. And instead you want to give him some space, because for a lot of men, it's really difficult to process those emotions and stuff. And some guys want space. Some women want space, right? It just kind of depends on you and women and men and all the different things that are involved there. But there's kind of this debate out there that I've seen a few women kind of bring up. Actually, on my page, there's a few women that brought this up the other day, where they're like, well, if you give a man space, right, he's going to find someone else. I gave this man space one time and he went and found somebody else. And it's like, well, that was because he never really liked you. Like, he didn't like you that much. If you give him a little bit of space, right? If you stop smothering a man and he runs off and finds somebody else, he didn't like you. He didn't like you very much, right? And smothering him wasn't going to prevent him from doing that, right? Or if you're in a relationship and he goes off and finds somebody else, it's like, you want to know that immediately, right? You want to know that his values are totally messed up, instead of smothering him and being like, if I'm on him all the time, then it'll be fine. And he won't have a moment to get away from me and find somebody else, right? It's crazy. It's crazy talk. But the other thing that you don't want to do, and this is something that I hear all the time from women, is you don't want to go to extremes, right? The magic is always in the middle. I like tell women, like, give him some space. There was a woman once that was like, well, you said to give him some space, but he is like, I did, but he hates it when I ignore him. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, like, what? Why are you ignoring him, right? You're not giving him space and ignoring him. You're giving him some space. And then, what happens usually when you give a guy space is he comes back over to you, right? You've created a vacuum and there's a space there. And then he wants to come over and connect with you and do all those things because he had some time to miss you. And if he's coming back and you're ignoring him, I mean, he's going to be like, she doesn't even want to be with me, right? That's what he's going to think. She doesn't like me anymore. She doesn't care about me. And then if he goes and finds somebody else, it's because you communicated the wrong things to him, right? And so you don't want to do that. And men do this as well in the men's dating world. I used to teach in the men's dating world, and we would talk with guys, and I'd be like, hey, because guys would be like so timid and stuff. And I'd be like, hey, you need it. Or they, just try to do the overly friendship thing with women, and which doesn't work at all. And you're like, yeah, you have to be more kind of assertive and strong and masculine, and they'd be like, well, I don't want to be a jerk and, abuse women. And it's like, whoa. Like nobody said anything about that. Like people tend to like jump from one side to the other. They're like, oh, nice. That means I have to be abusive, right? If I'm not nice, right? And it's like, no. There's this middle space where you can stand up for yourself and be strong and not allow people to walk all over you, but still be kind and caring and treat people well. Like it's not, you don't have to jump from one extreme to the other. And it's the same with this. Like just because you're giving him some space doesn't mean you should be ignoring him. You shouldn't be giving him space for like weeks at a time, and not talking to him. And, he messages you and you just are like, hey, I don't want to talk. Right. Like if he comes back to you, bring him back in. Like, what are you guys doing out there? And I think part of it's just misinformation or just getting pieces of information and then taking it and having no real general idea of what is going on from the principles, and just watching videos here and there instead of actually like getting the programs. So here we go. Okay. So don't smother a guy, give him space. Don't go to extremes. Magic is in the middle. Number 5, let's talk about number 5, is encouraging him to open up. So you want to encourage him to open up as much as you can. So reward the idea of him opening up. Reward him for opening up, just like what we were talking about before. When you catch a guy opening up and, you're rewarding him for it. It's like the baby, right? He's like a baby. Tell him how you feel when he opens up and tell him how you feel when he doesn't open up. So if he doesn't open up, just, you can communicate, how you feel instead of freaking out and kicking walls and going out and smoking a cigarette and being like, is it over because this man won't open up to me? And all that kind of stuff. Instead, you can just communicate what you're feeling and, all that kind of stuff and be vulnerable. That way he feels more safe being vulnerable. He feels safer being vulnerable. And tell him how you feel when he does open up. That way you're encouraging him to do it more and you just feel connected and excited or whatever it is that you feel from doing that. And that is the game. That is the game right there. So how do you get him to open up and stop pulling away? I'm going to go back over them. And if you have any questions, post your questions in the chat and we will talk about them. So number 1 is build mutual trust. Number 2 is be patient with him. Number 3 is be kind to him when he does open up. Number 4 is give him space before he needs it, but the magic is always in the middle. Don't go to the extremes. Number 5 is encourage him to open up